So, WBO middleweight champion Zhanibek Alimkhanuly defends his title with a 12-round unanimous decision. Yeah, like you guys, I'm a little bit surprised at that. I've just watched the fight, so it's fresh in my memory. Let's have a little talk about it. So, for those who maybe didn't follow the build-up to this fight, not that there really was a massive build-up, but in case you weren't aware of the fighters and where they were coming from, this fight was largely seen as quite a severe mismatch. I think it's fair to say, because just to put it into perspective, you have Zhanibek, who is pretty much being touted as a boogeyman. I've asked that question because I'm quite high on Zhanibek. I really rate him. I think he will kind of go on to be the best, if not one of the best, of this kind of new generation of middleweights. And he's got the amateur pedigree. He's fought some decent guys as a pro so far in his career and dealt with them with relative ease. Denzel Bentley, on the other hand, is a good fighter at British level. Had some good entertaining performances at British level, but has also had some rough moments. And it was kind of like, is he really just being cashed out at this point? He's a Frank Warren fighter. We know Frank Warren has a good relationship with the WBO. Was Warren just kind of rolling the dice on Bentley? I suspect that he was, because I don't think there was anything in Bentley's previous fights to suggest that he was ready for this level. And you can start to see why many people, including myself, were picking Zhanibek to not only beat Bentley, but beat him big. But that wasn't the case. As you can probably tell by a slight tone of surprise in my voice, Denzel Bentley not only went the full distance, full 12 rounds, but he actually made it kind of rough and tough in there at times for Zhanibek. So just to kind of go over the fight as a whole, the first 5 rounds, I felt like Bentley was very much on kind of damage limitation. He was, I think, I don't want to say scared, but I think he was very much on edge. He was aware, maybe too aware, thinking too much about the man in front of him, and he just seemed to be locked up. Wasn't much motion. He looked very tight, and it was really all Zhanibek, and you could see the pedigree straight away. Zhanibek was very active in his guard, looking to get those angles, use his eyes, see what he could open up. And for me, Zhanibek just swept the first 4 rounds. Then it got into the 5th and the 6th rounds, and this is where the fight, I feel, started to transition a bit, because getting out of the first 4 rounds, because many people were picking Bentley to get blown away in 1 round, 2 rounds tops. So he's now in the going into the 5th round, and you start to see him loosen up a bit. You really start to see him use his own active guard, and he went from this very static and stationary position to loosening up a little bit, giving Zhanibek a taste of his own medicine in terms of the head movement. And the 5th and the 6th rounds, to be honest, I think I gave him to Bentley. I feel like those were, they weren't massive rounds where he managed to rock Zhanibek to his boots or anything, but he didn't take as much punishment, and he started to get off his own offense. And Zhanibek, I think, was a little bit, at this point, he was maybe dealing with a little bit of surprise, because he probably thought that he was going to deal with Bentley in 1 or 2 rounds. And now he's like looking at himself thinking, damn, I'm round 5 or 6 with this guy, and he's proving to be a little bit harder to hit, because in those first 4 rounds, just to revisit them briefly, Zhanibek was trying to tee off from Denzel Bentley at times, and he was having some success here and there, mostly with the straight left to the body, which I felt paid off over the course of the fight. But Bentley was always able to be quite defensively responsible. Even the commentary team gave him credit for his head movement, because it really was quite effective, because Zhanibek's probably not the best combination puncher, but he's got a sharpness, and you really have to be on your P's and Q's, otherwise he'll catch you clean. But Bentley, always defensively responsible, and even if he did get hit, he was usually pulling away from the punch, so it hit him in the mouth and it knocked some spray off his head, but it wasn't a full-blooded, full power shot from Zhanibek. Sometimes getting hit on the forehead as well, which is a lot easier to take than being hit on the chin or it's like flush on the nose or anything. So yeah, very good damage limitation from Bentley, and I feel like that maybe unsettled Zhanibek a little bit because he has had it largely his own way throughout the course of his career thus far. But then we've gone over from the fifth and sixth, and now we're, the later rounds 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's like it's starting to shape up, and it's actually getting kind of competitive in spots. I still gave Zhanibek most of the rounds, but Bentley, he warmed up, he warmed into it, and he really just started to relax much more. And it was almost like he was he warmed into the fight, and he realized, you know what, this guy doesn't hit as hard as I think he did, as people are saying he did. I've taken some of his shots already, and I'm still here. Yeah, I'm a bit tired, but let me let loose a little bit. And you started to see Bentley go through the motions a bit more. Zhanibek, I feel like you could still give him most of those rounds, but it wasn't easy. He wasn't just having it all his own way. Denzel Bentley proved to be very tough because when he would get hit, he had a very good poker face. There were some times where, a couple of occasions, I can't remember which rounds exactly, but throughout the fight, Zhanibek would land, like really line up a good left hand, sometimes a short right hand, and you'd see the legs of Bentley stiffen. So you're like, oh, like that shot, he felt it, but he had a good enough poker face where he could just see out the rest of the round. He wouldn't give it up, kind of thing. And I think that's something that the commentary team didn't pick up on, because they could see he was hurt. But okay, it's okay if we see, as the viewers, the crowd, that Bentley's hurt. But if Zhanibek can't see it, then it must mean that Denzel Bentley's got a good poker face. And so we get into the 11th and the 12th rounds, and by this point, it's pretty much, okay, if this fight goes the distance, then it's Zhanibek's fight to win. It did look like in the 12th round, Zhanibek was going to get Bentley out there because he had him hurt on numerous occasions. But Bentley, he was just like, I'm not up on the scorecards. Let me just see this fight out. So if he did get hurt, he'd just start moving. He just used his legs. But then the final exchange of the fight was really quite impressive, because both guys were a little bit tired, but especially Denzel Bentley, because you could see, even though Zhanibek was tired, he has the experience, he has the training years under his belt. So even in the latter stages of the fight, he still had a lot of sharpness and a lot of strength in his technique. Whereas Bentley, he was pretty much zapped at that point, but he kept going, pretty much running on heart, and he was able to take some shots, give some of his own. And I feel like, he's lost a unanimous decision to Zhanibek, but Denzel Bentley, this fight is really going to benefit him in the long run, because it was a fight where it was being predicted that he was going to get taken out in the first 2 rounds, as I say. But not only did he go the distance and, scupper those plans, but he also got in a lot of good work of his own. So I think if Denzel Bentley is to go back down to British level, which is where he belongs right now in this stage of his career, he's going to go in with a lot of confidence and a lot more faith in his technique, and probably learn what he has to develop off the back of this. But to be honest, I don't think there's really much that Eve Man did wrong. I think it was just the activity. Bentley just didn't have enough ideas, so he wasn't doing anything wrong necessarily, but he just wasn't doing enough. Zhanibek was very much in control for most of the fight. You can see he has the experience. He's had fights like this before, probably in the amateurs, though this was the first time that both men had gone 12 rounds, so it was new territory for them both. And, I think it was actually a decent fight. It was a decent watch. It wasn't a complete one-sided beatdown. Just to talk about the scorecards, 2 of the judges had it 116 to 112. One judge had it 118 to 110. Personally, I think 116 to 112, obviously in favour of Zhanibek, that's the best you could give Bentley. I had it more 118 to 110, but I can't grumble either way. I'm happy with either of those. I think giving Bentley more than 4 rounds, I'd start to question what you're watching. So like 2 to 4 rounds, I think that's a pretty fair verdict for this fight. the technicalities of the fight. There was obviously a lot of jockeying for position and the lead foot dominance, and you could start to see how the more refined footwork, but also the head movement of Zhanibek was. It allowed him a few more opportunities to score offense and then capitalize on that lead foot dominance a bit more. Denzel, as I say, started a bit too stationary, so he was very static. I feel like that burnt up a lot of energy, whereas as soon as he started to loosen up and he warmed into the fight a bit more. The pull counter of Zhanibek was on display, and I feel like that is one of his kind of money punches, is especially against an orthodox fighter. The orthodox fighter throws their right hand, Zhanibek slips towards his back leg, so he pull counters and then pulls himself back in with the left hand over the top. Very accurate, very sharp. Like, there was some laser-like left hands to the body that Zhanibek threw to Denzel Bentley, and I feel like those sapped Bentley's energy even more. And so I still rate Zhanibek quite highly. The technique is there. I think it's more just I think it's a mental thing with him, because I think he expected that he was going to take Bentley out because he has been on a roll recently. And the commentary team picked up on this, where he was kind of just relying on one shot or two shots or three shots maybe, where you'd want to see, okay, these shots aren't enough to get the guy out of there. I need to put my foot on the gas. I need to start letting go of some heavy firepower. And so maybe that's what it is that's needed from Zhanibek, is he has the power, but sometimes guys are going to be able to take your power. So you need to let some more shots rip in combination. But for the most part, I'm still impressed by Zhanibek. Plenty of fighters in the past have had performances like this, where they come up against someone who's rather unassuming and they have a tougher fight than expected. So yeah, onwards and upwards for Zhanibek. And I also think onwards and upwards for Denzel Bentley. I think he can go back down to British level with galvanised confidence, and potentially go further in his career than if he didn't have this fight. So very brave effort from Denzel Bentley. I think he was a 20-1 underdog, and he wasn't following the script. He was in there to win it for sure, but he was just ultimately outclassed and overmatched by the man with not only more amateur pedigree, but professional pedigree when you think about it, because Zhanibek has had fights against Rob Brandt, who's former WBO middleweight champion. Hassan Ndam, was he a champion? I can't remember. Definitely a world title contender, I believe. And a couple other guys on the periphery. And Denzel Bentley has been the best opponent to date. So credit to him. And yeah, hopefully both men go on to bigger and better things in the not too distant future. So that's my take on this fight. If you've seen it, what did you think of it? Yeah, leave it down below and I'll get back to you. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.